Every few decades, it's time to rewrite the rules about what generates value for a business, if for no other reason than to ensure such rules for business comport with the natural rules of whatever economy we are operating within. And we believe that time is now. It is increasingly apparent that the managers of the current global financial system are making one last desperate collective attempt, in part through QE initiatives, to maintain the system in its present form. But it is increasingly clear that this is not a viable long-term solution. Major changes are afoot. A new digital and knowledge economy model could burst onto the scene and potentially wipe out the old service business model almost overnight. Not unlike how the new car service model Uber disrupted the highly regulated taxi business model, or how Airbnb changed the traditional guest accommodation industry. And there are a staggering number of people rising to join the new middle classes, with Asia adding the economic equivalent of a Germany every 3.5 years, and, according to many analysts, having the potential, even with China's slower growth of late, to add the equivalent of 3 Eurozones to the global economy over the next 25 years. It should not come as a surprise that such dramatic changes in the world will bring a need for a new model to manage all of the new variables in play. We may now, in fact, have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to reposition business as a restorative power for healing the global economy, an engine for profound positive change for the many. Management science can become a discipline that can create and harvest the true riches of the new century. To achieve this, however, we will need a new model. Not a charity model based on making money one way, often via very aggressive business practices, and spending it another way, via the setup of more corporate foundations. Not a mainstream CSR type of approach based on strategies to mitigate some of the negative impacts of business on the environment and on society through ad hoc, often non-scalable, expensive programs. But rather, it can be a model that leverages the principle of mutuality in business, the sharing of benefits, as a driver of value creation. A model that simultaneously promotes sustainable, profitable business and wider benefits in the form of human, social, and environmental well-being. A model that can mobilize and enhance visible and hidden riches in the many ecosystems in which businesses operate, beyond the legal boundaries of the firm and beyond financial capital. A model that doesn't reject capitalism outright, but rather leverages the power of capitalism, encouraging, not discouraging, the concentration of the various forms of capital, not just in the hands of passive shareholders or superactive traders, as is the case at present, but rather in the hands of business leaders and entrepreneurs of a new kind who have the talent and sense of broader purpose to bring prosperity to the many rather than to just the few. A model that would be much more complete than Friedman's mono-capital form of capitalism. Through our research to construct a new multiple capital business model, we found we had several structural problems. First, the fact that Friedman's model has been so dominant over the operations of nearly every corporation and the curriculum of nearly every business school for much of the last half-century means that the question about whether there is a right level of profit for a company has remained an iconoclastic question and a blind spot in the management sciences literature. It has been subsumed, perhaps, by the widespread misassumption that the answer must still be as much profit as possible, suggesting that any other profit objective has not yet entered the consciousness of business. Second, where the idea of rightness with regards to profit has been addressed at all in the literature, it has mostly been framed as part of a greater ideological attack on financial capitalism itself, most commonly from a socialist, Marxist, or environmentalist perspective. Hence, the debate about the possibility of improving the existing model has been more or less stifled by the misassumption that either financial capitalism must be right as it is, or it must be wrong, and should be completely rejected and replaced. And if it cannot be immediately replaced, it should be, at a minimum, be taxed heavily to compensate for some of its dysfunctions. This has not been our approach, accepting or rejecting outright the current form of capitalism as we appreciate the value and potential inherent in the capitalist model.